Okay, well, I think we've got most people connected now. There might be a few latecomers, but I'll let them in and manage all of that. Welcome, everyone. Nice to see you all. And it looks like a pretty good turnout. I think I've got 17 attendees. And yep, there's still a few people joining in. So we will probably get a few more along the way. It's great to have another virtual club meeting. It's cold outside now and here in Australia. And, you know, so there is a lot more reluctance to get out on a cold wintry night. Although I would really like to thank those of you that came along to our fundraiser last week for the Top Gun fundraiser. We raised over, I think it was about $320 all up for the Beyond Blue Foundation. So thank you very much for coming, and for those of us rev heads that really enjoyed the movie, it was quite enjoyable as well. Now, while I think of it, and before I forget, I would really like to invite members, or just to remind members, if you'd like to come along to our mid-year dinner, which is usually a very popular event. It's on again in a few weeks' time, the 12th of July, and we would appreciate it if you could register. We do need you to register online for this event so that we can get catering organised, and the bookings need to be made by the 5th of July. So if you could register, I'd really appreciate that. All right, well, without further ado, in a minute, I'm just going to remind you all that I'm going to put you all on mute. There'll be a Q&A section at the end, so you will get an opportunity to ask some questions. But first of all, I'm going to introduce you to Barrie Wills. And Barrie has kindly explained a bit about his history, and I'm sure he'll tell us a little bit more as he presents tonight. But he's had 50 years in the automotive industry, starting in Jaguar, and you may have heard him talk to Clive about Jaguar. So that was the start of his career, and he spent about 25 years employed by various automotive companies, and then a further 25 years actually working in his own business, doing project management and the like. And I guess that's really where we're going to focus the attention tonight, on a couple of topics that are really Lotus related. The M100 Elan and the DeLorean were both projects that Barrie worked on intimately during his career. So I'm sure he's got some great stories to tell on that front, and perhaps on other things about his time in the industry. So thank you very much for joining us, Barrie.
Pleasure.
And I'm going to hand over to you. You've got some photos and some presentation for us. So are you good to go on?
I'm ready to go. I just wanted to let you all know that I'm sitting here looking out of my window at the most glorious sunny summer morning in the UK. One of our rare summer days. I'm sorry you're all feeling cold out there. Anyway, let's get on with it. Yeah, my involvement with close involvement with Lotus were on several occasions. Well, I'm focusing really on two today. The first was the DeLorean project, which you may know Lotus was awarded the engineering contract for. I was what so-called between jobs in October 1978, when I received a phone call from a guy who introduced himself as the new personnel director of the new DeLorean Motor Cars Limited in Belfast, Northern Ireland. In 1978, the British government, September 1978, I should say, the British government had provided funding, the British Labour government, I should stress, had provided funding for John DeLorean to set up a project in Dunmurry near Belfast in Northern Ireland to build his car. And I turned down two offers. One came immediately at my first meeting with John. The second came after the personnel director rang me to uplift the salary, thinking that perhaps that was the problem. But my difficulty was that there were certain things going on in Northern Ireland at that time called the Troubles. And to be a Brit in Northern Ireland wasn't necessarily a good idea. So I was conscious that I had two young daughters at the time and chose to turn him down. Anyway, John then came up with, or had a phone call saying John had come up with a solution. So I went out again to meet him, and this time it was a lunch meeting, but not just with John, but with his wife, a lady called Christina Ferrari, Ferrare, not Ferrari, who was at the time America's top model. She was probably the most attractive woman I'd ever met in my life. I didn't tell my wife that at that time, but that was the case. And the two of them had lunch with me, and after lunch, John took a map of the UK out of his pocket, laid it on the table, and said, "Tell me, Barry, where's Northern Ireland on this map?" And Dunmurry. So I knew he was bluffing, but I pointed out to him this island on the left of Britain, and the little bit on the northeast corner was Northern Ireland, and there was Dunmurry. By this time we knew that Lotus were going to do the engineering. Where's Lotus based? Over here, John. This lump sticking out on the eastern side, it's called East Anglia, and there is Norwich, and just outside Norwich is a place called Hethel. That's where Lotus is. I've been a frequent visitor there. He said, "So where do you live?" "Well, I live in Coventry, John." Well, where's Coventry?" "There, John, right in the middle of England." So Coventry is halfway between Dunmurry and Hethel. "Yes, John." "So it is." So he said, "Okay," he said, "well, here's another uplift in salary. I'll appoint your purchasing director. You can place your purchasing department in Coventry." So that resolved the problem, and that's how I started. Typical John DeLorean effort. Anyway, as you may know, the DeLorean was designed by Giorgetto Giugiaro, well known to Lotus, of course. We'll come back to him again later. And this is a car called the concept car called the Tapiro, photographed with him, which was really, as you can see, an inspiration for the DeLorean. When John received his funding, this was one of the two prototypes he built or had built of the original design. This is called Proto 1. It still exists in a museum somewhere in the USA. I can't remember where it is. Shortly after I'd started work, I was asked to visit Hethel with a small group of DeLorean people to meet with Colin Chapman and others of his team. And this is the famous meeting where John and Colin held court at Ketteringham Hall, which you may be familiar with, which is part of the Chapman estate and is on the outskirts of Hethel. Left to right is Charles Bennington, who was the managing director of DeLorean Motor Cars Limited, my boss. Next to him, Bill Collins, who was John's engineer, chief engineer, who did the work on the prototype I've just shown you. Chapman, of course, ACBC, John DeLorean, Fred Bushell, Chapman's finance director and general keeper out of trouble, and Mike Kimberley, who was Lotus's chief executive at the time. Giugiaro wanted to refresh the car because it was a bit dated, and this is the upper wood model that he produced with the creased lines smoothed out and one or two features slightly changed to update it. And that is basically the design that Lotus started with, in addition to the second of the prototypes that was transferred to Hethel for them to use as a reference. This is the interior of the original Proto 1, which again was felt to be somewhat dated, and that was modified or refreshed by Giugiaro into what became the production car. A little bit of Porsche influence in it, we felt, but that's the interior that went into production and was fully engineered by Lotus body engineers within the Lotus team. Chapman insisted on two factors. One was that the car should be have a backbone chassis, Lotus style, nothing identical. If you read that it's an Esprit chassis, it's not. It's an original chassis. The only common denominator is the backbone that you can see. The other factor was that whereas John had adopted for his prototypes a new molding method called ERM, elastic reservoir molding, Chapman insisted that his vacuum-assisted resin injection system, VARI, should be applied. The leader of the Lotus engineering team was a guy called Colin Spooner, who was rehired by Lotus to head up the team. That's Colin in the middle, with ACBC to his right, being introduced to the Duke of Edinburgh, who sadly left this mortal coil only last year. So Colin was a very key member of the team, somebody I'm still in touch with. I now consider a close friend. The Lotus exercise started by building what we call mules, which were based on the original Proto 1 design, and splashes were taken off, fiberglass splashes were taken off the body to provide a body shell for the series of mules that were built. They were all built in different, each were built in a different color, so they could be identified, and the color related to the type of development work that was going on with the particular car. You see here a scene of the first of those mules on the Lotus test track at Hethel. Over in Dunmurry, of course, we had to be doing things in parallel, and we hired the first group of hourly paid workers who were going to be foremen on the line and on the assembly line, and the training with them commenced by us buying an Esprit from Lotus, which was stripped down and rebuilt by that first team of workers many times as part of the training exercise. Over at Hethel, work was going on rapidly with development, and here are a couple of guys working on one of the first prototype chassis frames. Here we are with work being undertaken on the first of the mules that you saw on the track there, and again another slide of guys working on assembling suspension and the like to the various mules that were being built. You can see one up on the ramp at the back, for instance. This hangar was refurbished to provide the space for Lotus to undertake the DeLorean program, and existed certainly at the Hethel site until fairly recently. There's another shot of various prototypes mules rather, being built by Lotus at that time. Colin Spooner was a very hands-on guy, and here he is working on the rear brake discs with an engineer at Lotus on one of those mules. Sorry about it being such a small picture. Here's another mule, a blue one, on the ramp being inspected, and a group of technicians working on another prototype. By now, the first prototype panels in stainless steel arrived produced off Kirkside tooling, low-cost Kirkside tooling. As well as being director of purchasing, I was awarded the role of coordinating Lotus's program through what was called the Product Coordination Committee. That consisted of various senior members of the DeLorean management team, plus a group of Colin Spooner's engineers and various other key people in the Lotus team. We met in a conference room mainly, but the only shot I've got of us at work is here, where I'm. That's me in the middle with the dark hair, leaning forward when I had hair, and there we are in the Lotus body engineering office. Another shot of the body engineering office at Hethel, which, for those of you that know the site, was in buildings across the road of Potash Lane, in what is now Clive Chapman's classic Lotus headquarters. That was refurbished for the purpose too. The other job that Lotus had to do, apart from engineering the car, was to produce the master models for molding the Lotus body in the Barrie system, using the Barrie system. And here we are with the master models almost complete. And back at Hethel, we were building, in parallel to Lotus's prototype build, we were building identical cars to meet the same state that they had reached. And here's the very first running chassis that was built at Dunmurry, and the very first car that was built at Dunmurry by that team, again using panels of Kirkside, produced off Kirkside tooling. Here's a shot of the DeLorean as a see-through picture, which gives you an idea of the extent of the engineering work that went on. Rear engine, of course, the Renault, Peugeot, Volvo PRV V6 2.85 litre engine, the Renault transmission, rear mounted. This is an automatic version. The Lotus rear suspension, trailing arm, and front suspension, double wishbone, spare wheel at the front. The gas tank cleverly was mounted in the Y of the backbone chassis. That was one of the early types of blow molded plastic tanks that were used in cars across the world. So, sorry, I've gone on one too many. So that basically is the Lotus involvement with DeLorean. They fully engineered the car. Lotus were such a flexible team that, working in parallel with all that was going on in Dunmurry, we broke, I think, a record in getting a car from start to meeting Californian regulations and making the first shipment to USA, the original target market, by Easter of 1982, a total of 28 months from start. And that includes, of course, building a factory and training the workforce and fully engineering and developing the car to production. I think that's a record that will stand for some time, because I doubt there are too many mad enough to even attempt it. So, having